everybody, to the newest episode of PenPodcast.com. I'm your host, Matthew Harms, founder of Pen for Hire, where we offer premier ghostwriting and author coaching services. Also, the creators of the Pen Podcast, where we sit with authors, writers, writing industry professionals, subject matter experts, and all-around interesting people. Today, I have the pleasure of being joined by fellow author and writing industry professional, Amy Collette. How are you today, Amy?
I'm great, Matthew. Thanks for having me on today.
It is my pleasure. Thank you for being here. Where are you joining us from?
I am joining you from the Denver area.
Ah, very nice.
Yeah, it's nice and cold and snowy here right now.
Well, you know what? We're not doing much better here in New York. It's in the low 30s, and from what I see, it just started snowing here as well.
Oh, all right.
So, if anyone's listening, you can clearly tell we're in winter here in New York. But anywho, enough about the weather. I really am dying for you to tell everyone a little bit more about who you are, what you do, because I know a lot of times when I have writing industry professionals on the show, people kind of question like, well, why would you have other people who do something similar to what you do on, and just don't understand that, like, I don't think there's any competition in life. We all learn and grow from each other.
Yeah.
So I'd love to hear what you have to say, like, about your own writing journey, and we'll go from there.
Yeah. Well, first of all, Matthew, I want to just say I appreciate your abundance mentality. I think that's really healthy, and it's good for our industry. It's good for the people we serve, because we all do a little something different. We have a little bit different perspective, and probably are a great fit for different people. So, there's lots of different people out there, and I'm just excited for more people to write more books.
I love that you said that, because kind of like one of our first questions or strategy sessions I'll have with a client is defining who you're writing for, because you can't say you're writing for everybody. There's no book that's been written. I mean, even the Bible, the Quran, not everyone agrees with it. Not everyone likes it. There's different strokes for different folks. So we need more books, and we need more people with more perspectives to help those people write their books.
Yeah. And I'm so glad you said the word perspective, because that is every author. Some people come to me and they say, Amy, do we really need another personal development book or another mental health book or another business book? And it's like, how much demand there is for those kind of books? That's why, because we all have different perspectives and different people resonate with different authors. So, there is definitely enough for everyone, and people are hungry to learn more, to grow, to expand. And so for us authors to step up and fill that need is wonderful. It also fills a need for us, because we have to get our messages out.
Absolutely. And I mean, there's two types I'm sure there's more than two types, but on the polar opposite, from what I see, two types of readers. You've got your type of reader who will voraciously devour 50 personal development books, take something away from all of them. And not a bad word to say about anything, because they're just at that point where they absorb everything and they filter out the rest. And then you get other people who may read 50 of them, hate 49 of them, but it was just that one.
Yes.
That one from the person who maybe didn't expect to even make a difference. They're a first-time author, but they resonated.
Right. So I got a little story I'd love to share, kind of along those lines. So like you said, we all write for a particular audience, right, in mind. Now, there may be people outside that audience that we have in our heads that will resonate with our books too. So I had this story of this guy. He's a big construction guy. I ran into him at Home Depot, and he said, hey, I gotta take you aside and tell you something. Like, he is not my ideal reader in my head. Like, he was not who I had in mind when I wrote my first book, The Gratitude Connection. But he said that your book was laying on my wife's night table, and she read it and she really liked it. So I picked it up, and he said, it brought me through a hard time. Like, it made me feel better. He's not a person who reads personal development books, but he happened to read it because it was kind of there, and it made a difference. And that's the kind of person I would never have thought would read my book, but it made a difference to him. And that's the kind of impact that we can make as authors and helping authors.
It's so funny you say that, because I really believe like books, they take on not a life of their own, a journey of their own. So just because someone didn't buy your book doesn't mean it's not going to find its way into their hands, because people, for the most part, at least I've never met anyone who throws a book out, right? We donate it to the
Right.
library, we give it to a friend,
Yeah.
whatever the case may be, but it may get shuffled around 50 times in its life, but it
Right.
never goes in the garbage, and it usually winds up somewhere where it's going to help somebody.
Right. I had somebody, this was really funny. I had a client, I worked with her when she lived in Denver, and then she moved to Santa Fe, New Mexico. She said, I was walking my dog one day and I went past this, the tiny libraries, the little library, boxes on the corner in a neighborhood. She said, I just thought I'd peek in there and there was your book, my book. It was crazy. She said, I didn't expect to see it, but there it was. And so it just goes to your point of like, it takes on a life of its own and finds its way into the hands that it's supposed to be in.
There's almost an overwhelming sense of responsibility as an author that comes with
Mm.
that, right? Knowing that you have a responsibility to share what you know. If it helped you, or if it's helped anyone, or you
Definitely.
think it can help somebody,
Yes.
what are you doing not putting it out there?
Right. Right. And that's what, do you find that with authors that you help that they are hesitant to put their message out even when they feel really compelled to do that?
Yeah, so I encountered, again, I'm going to use the two extremes. There are some people who fall in the middle, but I either get the person who they know they've got to do this. It's going to help the world. They're so convicted in their belief of what they do and how they help people. But then there's the other end of that extreme, which are the ones who, it doesn't matter where they're at in life, how much money they've made, what position they hold, they still feel like their message isn't worth taking the time, or that no one's going to value it.
Yes. Yes. I see a combination of that, because even when people feel really convicted, they still have doubts, they have those tapes running in their head. So in my new book, which is called Unleash Your Impact, I talk about what I call creative trauma. And you've probably heard these stories as a coach who's helping people who are writing a book, it's a personal development journey for the author. They have to come up against their fears and all that kind of stuff. And what I hear so often is that some person in their past, maybe it was a parent, maybe it was a person of authority like a teacher. And I've heard this so many times, it just breaks my heart. But they say, in third grade, Mrs. So-and-so told me I wasn't a good writer. Or in high school, somebody told me, well, I'm never going to win a Nobel Prize for my writing, or whatever, and people have gotten these negative messages from somewhere in their life, and that's still back there. No matter how much success, like you said, or how much money or whatever that they have, those tapes are still playing of something that says you're not good enough. And so when they become writers, it's an opportunity to work through that.
And an opportunity to share with other people who may have been told that whatever their passion is, whether it's writing or not, wasn't attainable, that they weren't good enough, right? That youth sports coach who said, well, you're never going to play in the NBA, or that
Right.
that art teacher who said, well, your drawing is really not going to wind up anywhere. And they let that get to them. But to hear from somebody who had a similar experience happen to them and has now embraced that and turned it into something
Oh,
positive and profitable and productive, where they've made something with that, can
right.
change one's entire perspective just as quickly as they got talked out of doing something.
Oh, completely. So yeah, it's really nice. Now that I've worked with enough authors, I've got some success stories to tell people, because it's either procrastination or perfectionism or whatever it is that keeps popping up as a barrier. Well, that's an opportunity to work through something. I always see it as an opportunity rather than, a fear to run away from. Because, a lot of people have been holding their book in their head for a long time because of those kinds of things. And so it takes a little coaching, takes a little talking out those things to get past them. And, if your third grade teacher doesn't like your book, well, that's okay. They're not your ideal reader.
I just learned something recently, or started to really see it in action recently, when I did my newest book, because I preach a lot of what I get from my clients, but tend to not focus on myself. But even if you do nothing with your book, just the amount of mental space that it frees up by putting it on paper. The human brain can only hold so much, right? So if you have 200 pages worth of information that lives nowhere but up here, you're doing yourself a favor by putting it down on paper. Whether you publish it, you don't, but just getting it out of your head is like the gorilla is off your back, and you freed up all that space to now focus on other things.
It's so true. So here's what I find. I wonder if you find this too, Matthew, because like some people come to me with several book ideas, and other people come and say, okay, I got one book in me. I'm one and done, And then that's happened to several of these authors of books behind me, where they got the one and done, and then they came back 3 months later and said, okay, I got another one. Because it's like they had to get the first one out to let the second one bubble up, give it space, like you said, to come out. Do you find that too?
Oh, absolutely. And it's an equal struggle both ways, because the ones who are like, well, I have these 4 ideas, that's the struggle in telling them, well, we're going to pick one, right? And let's pick the one either that you need out the most, or that's going to be the most beneficial to your business, or whatever you're trying to accomplish right now. And I need you to forget about the other ones. And then the other side of that struggle is the ones who are like, oh no, I'll never write another book. Like, it's just this one. And halfway through the book, they're like, oh, you were right. And then you've got to go repeat step 1 and tell them, okay, I thank you. I know I was right, but we're not going to talk about that now. That you got to finish this one.
Right. Yeah. A little of it is the shiny object syndrome. They're like, ooh, I got another idea. Let's go over here.
But it's such a testament to the fact of how much knowledge all of us carry with us. And we don't even think about it, because we're just doing every day, right? We're doing what we do, whatever profession that is, whoever we work with. And until you really start putting it all in one place, you can't even fathom what's bottled up back there.
That's right. So I learned about that. And this is a little tip for your listeners. This is something I tell my clients all the time. Or even people who think, oh, I might want to write a book someday, but I'm not a writer. How do I get used to it? So you've heard of the book, The Artist's Way?
Yes.
Okay. So I worked through that a few years ago. Actually, it was a catalyst for me writing my first book. And so Julia Cameron is the author of that book, and she suggests you write morning pages. And so it's 3 pages a day. And it's just to get the stuff out of your head. It's really not for anyone else to read. It's like journaling, old-fashioned diary or whatever. And for me, it just helps me get the junk out of my head, whatever is there kind of present at the moment. So then the other brilliant ideas that are waiting behind it can come through, right? So I tell people to do this because it develops a habit, which is great. It only takes about 15 minutes a day. And, it sort of just primes the pump and gets the stuff out of the way that you don't need anybody else to read. And then you can write good stuff, or it just is a great way to start your day, sparks your creativity. You get some great ideas going, and just gets the brain moving and flowing before you really get into your day. Do it the first thing.
What's interesting? As you were saying that, I was thinking back to a book I listened to probably a year or so ago, and I'm wondering if that's how he even came up with the premise. You might have heard of it, Outwitting the Devil by Napoleon Hill.
I have heard of it. Yeah, of course.
I listened to it. I'm sure it was written in the same manner, but much of the book is him having a conversation with the devil. Yeah. And it's all about like the things in daily life that are holding you back or impeding you So I
Yeah.
wonder if Napoleon Hill took a page out of the artist's way and was writing every morning just the stuff that was on his head, and then decided, you know what? Other people can benefit from what's bogging down my brain.
Yeah. I think it would have worked the other way because Napoleon Hill came a long time ago.
So maybe they,
But he was such a, he was such a trailblazer in so many ways, in terms of that you can retrain your brain, you can change your mindset, you can have a transformation in your life, which was kind of maybe it was a newer concept back then, but it was, now I think it's much more mainstream and it's much more accepted, but there are so many different ways to do it, and different perspectives, different authors come at it from different angles.
and that is what we were talking about earlier, which is so needed, because one of the big reasons I find that a lot of maybe these timeless pieces of work, or even the more modern like Tony Robbins, don't resonate with a lot of people is because they feel like, oh, well, you're already Tony Robbins, right? Or he's
Right.
Napoleon Hill, like he's here, I'm starting from here, and you can't relate, so you don't even try. But if you're hearing it from somebody who was where you are today 6 months ago, it makes it
Yeah.
a lot more real.
Yeah. Yeah. That's what my book was about, really. It's now there's all this science. So it's my book, The Gratitude Connection, is just about small habits that change your perspective, change your mindset over time. You do them on a daily basis. They're super easy, really fast. And it changes your perspective. At least it did for me. And it's done that for a lot of people who've read the book. So it's like retraining your brain. And now there's all this research and science, backs it up, that says, yes, with positive uh, habits, you can definitely reshape your brain and reshape the way you see the world and the way you approach your life. That is powerful transformation.
So with that said, I'm curious, what was the actual like impetus for you to decide I need to write this book?
Okay, so I'll tell you a little bit of the backstory. So I had been running this other business for years. It was great. I had just, was busy all the time, all this kind of stuff. And I had gotten a little complacent. I wasn't marketing. I wasn't doing a lot of business building and that kind of stuff. I had 2 or 3 big clients, and that's all I needed was long-term clients. And so, I got comfortable, right? And I lost both of my big clients within 2 weeks. One lost their venture funding and they were just shut down. And the other one got bought out, and they changed their business model and didn't need us contractors anymore and consultants. So they said, see you later. So I was kind of dead in the water, and I just panicked. I got depressed. I just was having a really hard time and just couldn't kind of get out of it, felt really stuck. And so I had read about this practice in the Jewish tradition called Hakarat Hatov. And it's just giving thanks for your blessings a couple of times a day. So it becomes a habit. And I thought, well, that sounds great. If I had anything to be grateful for, so I kind of had to force myself to start. And then once I did, I was like, oh my gosh, I have a lot of things to be grateful for that I'm not paying any attention to, So I started doing it in the morning and then the evening. And literally within 5 days, my phone started ringing. This is people I hadn't even contacted. Just my phone started ringing, new opportunities came my way, things started happening again. And my energy was just really different because I got a new perspective. And I was a believer, man. I was going to try anything and everything. I thought, if that one little practice got me that far, I'm going to try some more. So I had all these little practices that I had learned from different places, or I just made up. And I was doing some life coaching at that time, so I had people to test them out on. And they worked, they worked for people. So I felt like it would be selfish, like you said, to keep it to myself. I thought at that time, I didn't really know how to write and publish a book. I had to figure out all the hard things myself. But it didn't matter. I was on fire. I just had to do it. So that's how my first book got written, and that's how a lot of first books get written.
I was just going to say, it sounds to me like there was no methodical planning of I need to become a bestseller. I need to sell 1,000,000 books so I can pay my rent or my mortgage. It was more of the universe was kind of just saying, you need to share this.
Yeah, it was really a project of the heart. I felt like I had something super valuable um, and very accessible to share, and so it really has been that way where people will read it and then they'll buy 10 copies for gifts and things like that, because it's just, it's easy. It's not like reading some of these self-help books that you can only read like 2 or 3 pages at a time because it's just so intense. My book is much more digestible, for the average person to just make these small changes in their lives so that it adds up to a happier life.
So you said something that I now have a question for you. When someone comes to you and they have a concept that is just like so high level and intense, what what process do you go through with them to either A, write it as is, or B, kind of talk them through like making it more digestible? Because I'm all for thinking, but I also realize that if you're trying to get your message across, a lot of times like you can't sound like a textbook.
Oh yeah, yeah. You never really want to sound like a textbook. I call it, some people fall into that professor sounding voice when they write, but really it goes back to what we were talking about before, of connecting directly with your audience, right? So if you're writing, I'm working with a project right now that's it's pretty high level. It's for people who are not spiritual beginners. They've been at this for a while. They've done the work, and now they need to get to that next level. So that's who it's for. It's not for someone who's just dipping their toe in for the first time, right? So we have to be real clear about who that audience is and what we can assume about them, right? So we know that they have gotten to a certain level of where we can use language that maybe we wouldn't with beginners, that kind of thing. But we also need to make it super clear that who this book is for, so that's really, I don't want to dumb it down, or make it something that it's not. So the hard work then is up front. I spend a lot of time with people defining exactly what their mission is. Why are you writing this book? What change do you hope for it to have for your readers? What transformation are you looking to make for them? Who are those readers? What do they need, and how can we best serve them? And then also, what are your author goals? Are you going to be out there speaking? Are you going to be creating courses and workshops and things like that to take people through this work? Or is it just the book? That kind of thing. And so that as they're writing the book, we can make sure they're hitting those targets, and that they're not going off on a tangent, or they're getting a book that is really different from what they defined at the beginning.
I love it. That is very similar to our process as well. If the
Yeah,
strategy, the mission, if everything's not aligned, it doesn't matter how well you can write. It's just not going to land.
right, right, right. And it's easy as a first-time author, because I generally work with first-time authors. It's easy as an author you've got so much, like you said, you've got 5 books in your head somewhere, right? It's easy to mix that up and start writing one book and then go off on this direction or get distracted. and then it's a mishmash, and it's not really helping in the way that you intended. So staying with that alignment, that's why it helps to have support of a coach, of a writing guide to help you just know what you're doing and stay on track.
So with that said, I have $1 million question for you, and this is probably more for my own entertainment and knowledge than the audience, unless we have other listeners out there who are writing for others as well in any capacity.
Right.
How do you balance your working with multiple other projects that are not your own without losing sight of your own message in writing?
Ooh, that is a big question. I've just been through that because I just finished this book called Unleash Your Impact. And honestly, it was a struggle. It was a struggle because, as a book coach and publisher, I'm really focused on my clients being successful and helping them get their stuff done and staying on target and all that kind of stuff. So my book definitely came second. Definitely fell through the cracks sometimes, and honestly took longer than I wanted it to. So yeah, I had to go through learning some of those lessons all over again and be in my author's shoes, which was probably good for me because it just gave me more of that empathy and understanding of what they're going through. And they're running businesses, they're raising families, they're doing all the crazy things that we all do, and trying to write a book too. It can be a lot.
Yeah,
So how
especially.
about you?
So I had the similar problem with my newest book, Get Real. I went to the opposite extreme though, and I felt guilty about it because I just stopped taking on new clients for 2 months so I could
Oh,
work only on the book. I only focused on the existing clients that I had. And there were plenty of points where, as you just said, I had to realize not everyone has that luxury, right? So when my clients aren't doing their writing, they couldn't just stop working. But then I also had that feeling of guilt of, one, I could be helping other people. Two, I could be making money by helping other people.
right.
And I really just had to use that as the kind of the motivation to get it done as quickly as possible. So this didn't turn into a long drawn out project where it impacted me financially and prevented me from helping other people.
Right. Right. So did that work for you? I mean, was that a good option in terms of just being able to focus on your one thing and get it done?
You know what? For me, it was, and I just want to give the disclaimer that everyone's situation is going to be different, and I'm not advocating that. But I had gone prior to that. My last book was published in 2020. So it was a solid 3.5 years before I had put anything out for myself. So I used that feeling of guilt of shortchanging myself to drive the decision to say, you've earned this, but you can't do it indefinitely. Like, if you're going to do it now and get it done. And that's what I
Right.
did.
Yeah. Awesome.
But in
Good.
the process, I came up with 2 other book ideas that now I've had to tell myself, like, I outlined them. I started them. They're in a Google Doc, but I was like, no. Now that's got to wait in due
Right.
time.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. See, you got that book out of your head and there's more waiting.
But it was a beautiful thing because I don't want people to think now that, it'll never be done. Like, it was gratifying. It was rewarding. That other info is out of my head. I don't even think about it anymore.
Yeah.
But it's been replaced by all the other stuff where I was like, oh, wow, I should write about that too.
Right. Yeah. I've never met somebody who doesn't have enough content for at least one book. I mean, just think of the experiences and how we've each filtered those experiences, through our own filters to get our own unique perspective of those. Everyone is different and we take something different away from every experience.
Yeah. I mean, if you are older than 30 years old and you don't have enough content to write a book, I feel like you have to be living under a rock.
Yeah. Yeah. Or you don't maybe value your own experience. And that's another whole conversation.
Yes, that could be a whole episode in and of itself because imposter syndrome is real, like we mentioned earlier, and it
Right.
affects everybody. It
Yeah.
doesn't matter if you're a 20 something who feels like I'm too young to have anything to say, or a 70-year-old who's accomplished more than most have.
Yeah.
It's just the mind state that we all fall victim to at one point or another.
Right. Yeah.
So Amy, what comes next for you? Any books in the works? Any upcoming projects you're excited about that you can share?
Well, let's see. We just launched several books, and that's exciting. And then my book is going to launch first of the year. So that's fun. So just kind of ramping up for that. And then just got a lot of new books started. So 2024 is going to be fun, exciting. Got some new, really cool books coming out that are just different, really different. So it's always fun to have something that's so. For example, I've got this book that's about a woman's bipolar experience, her experience with bipolar, and it's really different and really super helpful. I learned a ton from it, and it's just a fantastic story, but also a fantastic resource for people who are dealing with that themselves, for their families, their friends, and even their therapists. She's got everybody involved in this book, and it's really a cool conglomeration. So looking forward to that coming out on first quarter next year too.
I love that. In fact, before I give you a chance to tell everyone where to find more information about you, I have to add that one of the best parts about what we do is getting that firsthand education, right? Really being able to pick this person's brain or any person's brain who's an expert in their field, because one, we're helping them make sure their message is fully clarified and understandable to everybody. But we also have the opportunity to ask the questions most readers never will.
Right, right. That's super fun. Actually, I have a great example of that. So I have a book called Our Favorite Movies: How Films Affect Our Mental Health. It's by an author named Anne Foistel. And when I talked to Anne first and was helping her with her book, I said, so I'm not a movie person. I'm not a big film freak, you know? And I said, that could be bad or that could be good, because I can maybe see gaps where somebody who's a film buff and knows all this stuff wouldn't see gaps. So, and it actually was good because she did, it's 3 parts. She tells her own story, mental health journey, and how films she uses them as a coping skill, it's called cinema therapy. Very interesting. And then she talks about how to choose films that will help you instead of, disturb you. And then she does film reviews. So she was writing this film review and she was talking about it, and I couldn't make heads or tail of it. She's a great writer, but this one review wasn't making any sense. And so when I told her that, she said, and I said where I was getting confused, she just started laughing because the characters in the film are named after emotions. And so she was just using their names without saying that. And it was very confusing. So if I had seen the film before, I probably would have thought that was fine. But I didn't understand until I saw the movie. But she had to explain what was going on there first.
And that is where you earned your professional retainer.
Yeah, it was my editorial skills came in handy then.
And I will say, I've mentioned this countless times, but I'm going to mention it again. This is why even us professional writers have other people read what we write.
Oh, yes.
We can't assume that what we said was clear because we are the experts at what we know.
Right.
And sometimes A to Z connects when we left out the rest of the alphabet.
Oh, yeah, because your brain is so great at filling in gaps. But your reader doesn't have your brain. So, it's absolutely essential for any writer. If you don't use a book coach like us or a service like we provide, at least hire a professional editor, because every writer, I don't care how good you are, needs an editor, a good one.
I love ending on that note because that just seriously, I'm going to coin the phrase: good editors make bad writers good, and good writers great.
Yes, that's exactly true.
So this has been amazing. I really appreciate you being on the show today, Amy. Before I let you go, please tell everyone where they can find out more information about your existing book, your upcoming book, working with you, any and all of the above.
Okay, you can find me on all the socials under Amy Collette or Unleash Your Inner Author. And you can find me at my website at unleashyourinnerauthor.com. I would love to connect with anybody who's got a few books in their brain.
That is fantastic. So for everyone listening, you know the drill. We always appreciate when you support our guests. Head over to Amy's website, follow her on social, reach out with any questions. As always, you can also leave a comment on the show notes, reach out to me directly, and I'll point you in the right direction, matt@penforhirenyc.com. Always appreciate you tuning in, listening, supporting the show and our authors. So you've just spent this time on the PenPodcast.com with Matt Harms and Amy Collette, and we will catch you all in the next episode. Thanks so much for tuning in.
Thanks, Matthew.
Thank you, Amy.